Hey guys, Nicky Skevich back again with Daily Fantasy Winners and the next episode of Tee to Green. And it's for the WGC Bridgestone Invitational this week. It is at Firestone Country Club in Akron, Ohio. So it is a WGC event. This is certainly one of the best fields of the year that is not a major championship. We have the PGA Championship next week, actually. So we're in a good stretch of high quality competition here for the next couple of weeks. And actually, the FedEx Cup playoff starts a little bit later this month. So this is the kind of like the home stretch for the golf season, and we get a lot of good competition here. So for this tournament, though, specifically, again, like I said, World Golf Championship Tournament. It's a tournament that has existed since '99. The tournament has been at Firestone every single year with the exception of 2002, I believe. And so obviously plenty of good course tournament data history out there to find. And of course, some of it will be on DailyFantasyWinners.com, of course, in the forum section as well. So obviously we're going to have a smaller field this week because it is a WGC event. There are only 76 players in this field right now. I believe 76 is the number right now because Brandt Snedeker has withdrawn with, he's been kind of withdrawing here over the last couple of weeks with his rib issue and presumably trying to get ready for the PGA Championship next week. And then Martin Keimer has withdrawn as well. And I think he actually even withdrew next week from the PGA as well. So a couple of people dropped out. I think we're at 76. But anyways, it's about half the normal number what we get in a normal PGA Tour event. But because of this, there is no cut. Everybody's guaranteed 4 rounds as long as nobody is disqualified or withdraws for an injury or whatever the case may be. So that changes the strategy a little bit, but we'll touch on that in just a second as we dive into the golf course. Firestone Country Club, specifically the South Course at Firestone. Par 70, tipping out about 7,400 yards. So obviously, only 2 par 5s on the golf course. Those are holes 2 at 526 yards, and then hole 16 at 667 yards. Number 2, that is a par 5 that will certainly be an eagle hole for pretty much everybody in the field. We usually see at least 10 eagles there. Sometimes we get a dozen eagles. Actually, there may have been under 10 last year. The scoring was a little bit tougher last year, but we'll see about 10 eagles there, give or take. And then on hole 16, 667. Sometimes we actually do get an eagle or two there, believe it or not, because there is a sort of a speed slope or a significant downslope portion. A significant portion of the hole does go downhill, but it's a pretty long drive to get there, and you need to be downwind, and it's only reachable by the bombers. And realistically, we might see 1 or 2 eagles there if the conditions are right and maybe like the tee box is moved up. But because there's like a pond in front of the green, very, very few people actually try to go for this green, and it's not really worth it for the most part. So in any case, the length will not help you as a bonus for eagles on this golf course. But it is 7,400 yards and a par 70, so it actually is a little bit of decent length. And so all the par 4s on this course are over 400 yards. So just something to keep in mind there a little bit, that while the length doesn't necessarily help there, it does play a little bit longer there for the par 4s aspect. And so let's see here. As from other things about the golf course, they are heavy tree-lined fairways, and they're also very narrow fairways. A lot of the times you get to some of these golf courses that do have tree-lined fairways, only some of them are heavily tree-lined, and then you have some that are not quite as tree-lined, or sometimes it's only tree-lined going down one side of the golf hole. It is pretty much both sides of the fairway. They're narrow fairways, and they're very heavily treed, and they're very thick trees. So just to say that even though there are very few penalty strokes on this course, or like a couple small ponds, basically, like the one I described for hole 16 on the par 5, you're pretty much going to be able to always play your second shot off the tee because you're not going to, or whatever, you're not going to run into many penalty strokes. But the problem is if you're not hitting the ball accurately, you're going to be hitting a lot of punch shots and you're going to be scrambling a lot of the time. Or unless you hit it so horribly, you're on another golf hole and then you're hitting it back over the trees, which is another challenge in itself. But and then there's visual issues. But so accuracy is a little bit of an issue, and length's a little bit of an issue as well. You kind of got those working neck and neck, and we'll touch on that in the strategy here in just a second. The greens are certainly on the smaller side by PGA Tour standards. So that is something to note here for the strategy angle in a second. And but for the most part here, if you just look at this golf course, it's pretty straightforward. There's nothing too quirky about it or anything like that. It's pretty straightforward. You see what you get, and that's actually why a lot of people probably like this golf course on the PGA Tour. So, okay, strategy angle. Statistics: strokes gained tee to green, always. Strokes gained off the tee and strokes gained approaching the green definitely show up. I would give maybe a slightly to the approaching the green, but it's really it's about, you can keep it 50-50. You can tweak it a little bit to make it more approaching the green if you want. Excuse me. From the accuracy angle, because I touched on it, it's not like the accuracy is not like enormously important. It's more about the strokes gained tee to green and approaching the green type of the thing. From an accuracy standpoint, it is not incredibly important, but it's one of those things is if you are driving the ball horribly throughout the 4 days, it will absolutely catch up with you because of the way I described. There's narrow fairways, they're heavily tree lined. You're going to be punching and scrambling all day. It'll catch up with you. So you need to drive the ball a reasonable amount. You can't be terrible. So that is something to note. Birdie or better percentage will certainly show up here, just because obviously we have a no cut event, so we can be a little bit riskier with the lineups if type of a thing, and we don't have to worry about missed cuts and whatnot. But obviously, so you want guys that make birdies. It makes perfect sense here, obviously, and being a little more aggressive. So ownerships, because this is a smaller field, there will obviously be some inflated ownerships. However, if you do take a look at the field, obviously being very strong, but you look at where everybody is priced, it's not like it's going to be inflated everywhere. It's just going to be inflated for the players who are much cheaper, because there are just as many players this week as there would be in a normal week who are priced, $11,000, $10,000, $9,000. Talking about DraftKings, of course, here. That those and even 8K, those will all be the same. But if you get down into that lower 7K range and then the 6K range, that's where you're going to see the inflation, because there's fewer options. Now, at the same time, even though you're taking out half the field, a large chunk of those golfers normally don't get any ownership anyway, so it's not like you're just all of a sudden slapping on a bunch of ownership, to only a few guys. But some of the guys will be inflated a little bit down there with fewer options to choose from. So that is something to keep in mind. However, on the flip side of this, because there is no cut in this event, the upside of fading the higher owned cheaper golfers, there's not nearly as much upside to doing it, because obviously it's a huge deal when you're playing all 4 rounds instead of only playing 2 rounds, when you're getting all your points or most of your points via recording the scores on the golf hole. So that's pretty obvious and pretty straightforward. So this essentially here, what I mean by this is, you definitely want to make sure your GPP lineup doesn't have really high collective ownership. But if there is a chalky play that's maybe a little bit cheaper that you do really like and just checks all the boxes for you and everything like that, it is definitely fine to play him this week. I'm not nearly as opposed to it as I would be in a different kind of other week or a different situation. But of course, at the same time, if there's a chalky play that you see and he's not checking the boxes for you, and you actually don't like him as much as the field does, then go a different direction or lower the ownership, whatever you want to do. That's definitely a good thing to go. Don't pick a golfer just because other people are doing it. Do it off of what you think and what checks the boxes for you. And hopefully I'll give you a couple more boxes here to look for in terms of the strategy angle. So So yeah, the only couple other things I was going to add are the recent form. That's really obvious. And then the strokes gained putting regression tool. Score one for the strokes gained putting regression tool last week, because Jonathan Vegas has obviously not been playing very well for the last, I think couple months or so, give or take. And he was definitely due for some positive, for some good luck putting, because he's been running really poorly with the putter this year. He hadn't been playing well in some other statistics as well, of course, but he was running poorly with the putter all year. And this year, this past week at the RBC Canadian Open, he won the golf tournament, of course. So it's definitely obviously a thing that you should be paying attention to each week. Kevin Chappell won obviously earlier this year. That was a week where the strokes gained putting regression tool loves him and still likes him, actually a reasonable amount, not quite as much as back then. But it's definitely a thing that's worked out here a handful of times throughout the year. And so I would definitely recommend to keep using that to your disposal on the website over at DailyFantasyWinners.com. So, okay, let's move right right on into the picks. And of course, I'll touch on weather in the forum as I do each week. I don't see really anything weather-wise to discuss right now. And so if I don't bring up weather in one of these Tee to Green videos, it just means I don't see anything worth bringing up in a certain week. But if it does become an issue, then I think it will be, and something changes, then I will be posting it up on the forum before Wednesday evening, obviously, when you should be finalizing your lineup. So, okay, on to the picks. So if you take a look at the odds per dollar. It's just the odds in general, quite frankly. The three most expensive guys on DraftKings in Jordan Spieth, Dustin Johnson, Rory McIlroy, and I think they're actually the three most expensive on FanDuel, and they are. If you take a look at them, their odds per dollar obviously are much better than everybody else, just because the sportsbook odds like them as much. I actually don't quite necessarily agree with that. Not as much as the sportsbooks do. I think those odds are a bit inflated for all three and for different reasons. And so, anyways, they all obviously could win the golf tournament, of course. I mean, they're great players. But the reasons why I don't like each one of them just a little bit are, for Jordan Spieth, obviously his form is off the charts, but he's 114th in strokes gained off the tee and 136th in driving accuracy, and he has been particularly terrible with the driver, especially over the last couple of weeks. He's been able to get away with it a little bit more on the last couple tournaments he's played. His strokes gained approaching the green is insane right now. It is really darn good. And if you look at Spieth's career over the last few years, you know definitely that the strokes gained approaching the green has been like the biggest thing for him. Of course, with his hot putter, obviously, they're both extremely important. But the strokes gained approaching the green by far has been monstrous for him. This year, especially. And so I will just say it's one of those things where Spieth will probably be having to hit his driver quite a bit this week. And over the course of 4 days against really good competition where he's not, I don't think he'll not have as much room to work shots with his iron shots if he does hit the driver offline, where he'll be having to punch out or hit weird curved shots and things like that. I just think he might be scrambling. There's more reason to think he might be scrambling a little bit more here. I know it worked out at the Open, and it might work out again here, or he might just drive the ball really well here and surprise us all. But at the same time, for given all the popularity he's got right now, and just kind of how it fits a little bit, he's just not like my top favorite choice in the world right now, especially for GPPs, especially here for what we're talking about. So, in any case, so that would be my thoughts on Jordan Spieth. But obviously, the strokes gained approach in the green is insane, and so if he does drive the ball really well, he could very well obviously just walk away and win it. But at the same time, if he does win this week coming up, that's 3 in a row, and that is extremely difficult to do. So I would it's one of those things where, yes, Spieth will probably play well, but I just probably actually wouldn't be my first choice actually to win it. So, anyways. Moving on to Dustin Johnson. So he obviously has been in some poor form. He looked a little bit better last week, a lot easier to do that at the RBC Canadian Open. But he actually mentioned in that week that he has been dealing still with some like lingering back issues from when he fell or whatever it was at the Masters or just before the Masters and ended up having to withdraw. So that's obviously not a good sign, obviously. He did show he was a little bit better, obviously, at the Canadian Open, and we have seen no signs of him really showing these issues other than just poor form. Like, we haven't seen him, like, withdraw from tournaments or considering it or anything like that. But at the same time, when you hear that pop up and there is a major next week, and the fact that this is a no-cut event, those are bad circumstances. Like, if anything kind of comes up and something lingers with Dustin and he just wants to mail it in, he could withdraw. I'm not saying he will or it's even likely. I'm just saying there is... If a couple variables fall a certain way, I could see him withdrawing, and Dustin's done it before in the past. It's been a while since he's done this, but he has done it before. So if this were maybe a cut event or there wasn't a major next week, I wouldn't be so worried about it. But there's a couple things lining up here that just makes me think it's a little bit more risky than people realize. For Rory McIlroy, he split with his caddy that he's been with for pretty much his entire career going into this event, which is interesting timing that he didn't wait till the end of the year, or that he did actually look better at the Open. It was just that was kind of out of left field a little bit, at least to me, at least on the timing of it a bit. But in any case, so yeah, that's not a good sign going into a tournament at all. And so that's the main reason. Caddies are a huge deal for these players, honestly, in my estimation. And so in any case, those are just basically, like, they're all great players. Could they win? Sure, of course. It's just for the top picks. In terms of the way the ownerships will go, with how popular Spieth is and how high the odds per dollar is for all three of the guys, I would just say, if you're only doing 1 or 2 GPP lineups, I would actually try and build start a little bit cheaper than this for your lineups on both DraftKings and FanDuel. So, but for the guys I do like here, I like a lot of these guys. So this is more about value to me because there are so many guys in this next, like, lower 9K, 8K range for FanDuel, like 10K, 9K for DraftKings, and even goes down farther than that. But we're just going to touch on the more expensive guys for now. So I'd follow the value here a little bit. So for FanDuel, Brooks Koepka and Justin Rose have tremendous value, more value on on FanDuel. So Koepka and Rose on FanDuel, and then for DraftKings, Hideki Matsuyama, of course, and Jon Rahm are the two on DraftKings that I particularly like. The strokes gain putting tool absolutely loves Hideki, and every single sign for Hideki points positively this week to doing well this week. There's nothing that I see that says, like, he won't do well. So if you want me to, like, give you just one person who I think is going to win, I'm taking Hideki this week. And I'm actually kind of slightly hoping he would hope that his ownership would be not super low by any means, but, like, I think it might be a tiny bit lower given all the options around him. Like, Jon Rahm's a little cheaper, and then you've got Ricky Fowler just above him, and then a lot of guys will gravitate toward the most expensive guys. And it's because it's a no-cut event, a lot of people are going to be thinking stars and scrubs type of a thing. So I just think, like, a lot of the time, some of these like lower 10, 9K, 8K guys, they might slide through the cracks a little bit here, a little bit more than I think people might realize. So again, Koepka and Rose on FanDuel, Hideki and Rahm on DraftKings. They're all fine on both sites. I'm just saying that's where the value is, and that's probably where I would lean a little more if you're on those sites. And then as far as Ricky Fowler, obviously, because he's the only expensive guy I didn't mention here of this group. He checks the box in pretty much everything right now, and there's a lot going for him. There is one thing really that's not going for him at all, and that is the strokes gain putting regression tool. He's a minus 0.66, I think, right now. So he's one of the worst. I shouldn't say he's one of the worst. He's running one of the hottest this year, comparison to what he probably should be doing. And Fowler's been around enough now that that number means something. He's played enough. He's obviously played enough seasons. He's played enough tournaments over the last few years that number should mean something. So that's pretty high up. I know Fowler looks really appealing for this tournament in a lot of ways, but with the number that high, I just can't put him on like my top picks type of a thing with that number sitting there. So in any case, so that is it for all the picks. Oh wait, no, it's not. That's a lie. A couple other guys I just wanted to mention who were slightly cheaper than that for some more value type of stuff. Sergio and Adam Scott are a little bit cheaper on DraftKings by the comparison of the way the salary structure works, and then Paul Casey on FanDuel as well. I like those guys definitely as well. So again, like all these guys, you guys all know this. For the do golf, these are all great strokes gain tee to green guys off the tee and approaching the green. Some a little bit better than certain categories than others, but it all kind of follows the same theme and everything. So, okay. So that is it for the picks. I have actually one more thing really quickly to show you, which I am really happy about. And that is with FantasyLabs. They added something, and again, like I said, I'm stoked about it. If you go to FantasyLabs here, onto the main page, and you go to golf, and you go to the new thing down here called ownership here on the drop-down menu. And we will wait for this to open. This is my internet, not the website. Sorry about that. And as it takes a second to load here, basically FantasyLabs has all the ownership for both DraftKings and FanDuel for like the most popular, like GPPs it looks like here. So this is like last week for the RBC Canadian Open. They have the ownership for the $8 best ball, the $33 dog leg, the Club Pro. So they got the high stakes, the Country Club, and everything like that. And they've got the average ownership across the board at the GPPs. And they've got like volatility here, like the difference between the ownerships at the various stakes, and then even far off to the side, it might be off your screen, but if you actually have access or you have an account with and signed up with FantasyLabs, and you can do models and set your exposures and everything like that, it'll have your exposures on the right hand side, and it'll tell you like what your leverage is versus the field and everything like that. And I will just say this: if you are playing daily fantasy golf, and you're especially doing GPPs, this is 100% a very this is an awesome thing. It really is. So if you are somebody that has FantasyLabs, I would definitely recommend using this. And if you are someone who plays daily fantasy golf and you're seeing this and you have not joined FantasyLabs, or you were thinking about it but you're not sure, this is something that I would say this is worth it to me alone on its own. Not even to mention the other stuff that they offer, obviously, all the great stuff. So. In any case, I just want to point this out. You guys should certainly, I would just, again, like I said, I would recommend it, and it's a great tool. And just pulling up FanDuel here to see what kind of the contest they have for FanDuel here. So like in FanDuel, they have the $4 PGA Eagle. That's like the biggest one, obviously. And then, yeah, they have like the $33 PGA Driver, and then some higher stakes ones here as well. So yeah, they've got all the stakes here. It looks like the most popular GPPs, and I'll give you a good idea. So pretty sweet stuff. And in any case, so this is new, and it's awesome. And so that is it for the FantasyLabs angle. And I just want to point out, because this is the last week, or excuse me, this is the second to last week. Next week is the PGA Championship, which will be my last week of tee to green for the rest of 2017. The plan is to be back for 2018. If anything changes in terms of the way I'm going to do the videos or the content, I will absolutely let you guys know on the website and Twitter and everything like that. Because I'm pretty much, I wish I was able to transition to football a little bit earlier with some more prep stuff. But obviously we got to at least get through the PGA Championship into like at least a good portion of the meat of the golf schedule here wrapping up. And so I just want to point out, I have started with NFL articles a little bit. I'm doing divisional like breakdowns or like quick fantasy position outlooks a little bit. I just got the AFC East one done here. It's like 4,000 words or a little over 4,000. So it's like 1,000 words per team essentially. And it just goes through like, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. Just describes like where the battles are in terms of like who might win certain starting jobs or who might make the 53-man rosters, just to get like the good preparation a little bit as a starting point as we move forward toward the NFL season. And so you can definitely check that out, and you'll see I've got like some videos of things like that of some of the prospects on here, and I dive into some of the statistics here, but they're quick overviews. They'll help you get started. So anyways, that is it. I'm rambling now. So I'm at Nick Yuskevich on Twitter. DailyFantasyWinners is on Twitter at DFantasyWinners. And then definitely we love the subscriptions to the YouTube channel. Very much appreciated. And good luck this